when somebody maybe isn't executing, there's a couple things that could be off. We could have the wrong strategy. They maybe don't have the resources. Sometimes it's them. How do we discern when we've got the wrong person versus the wrong strategy? And that can get sticky because you talked about empowering champions and we want to believe in our people. Yet there's times we have to evaluate and go, maybe this person isn't the person to pull this off.
Yeah, I think it's a really good way to approach it, because a lot of times we tend to blame the people downline rather than sometimes looking at the systems that we created or the systems that we allowed. And so it could be there was a bad system. Maybe we didn't give them the resources. Maybe we asked for too much, didn't give them enough time. So if you go in with the attitude to learn and to truly dissect and discern, what do we have? Did we not give you what you needed? Was it unfair expectation? If you get through all that and consistently you recognize that the person isn't delivering and it really is on that leader, then what you do is you go into coaching mode. And for a lot of leaders, this feels awkward. What I always try to tell them is that whenever someone coaches me, it's because they believe I can get better. And if they've written me off, they're not going to coach me. So anytime I'm coaching someone, it's because I believe in them. And the better a player in sports, if you're coaching a little league, t-ball team, there's probably one coach and 14 kids running around. When you get into the majors, each position has a coach, not just one for 14 players, but there's a pitching coach and there's a batting coach, and so the better a player is, the more coaching they're going to get. So if we can create in our culture the idea that when we're correcting and coaching, that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. It communicates value. So we're going to start there. If a player's not getting it done and we're bringing coaching in, then you're not in trouble. We're trying to help you get better. Then what I always try to do is people are really afraid of anything that feels like confrontation. And so what we're going to do, Daniel, is not confront, but again, coach. And if there's a player really not doing well, what I like to do, I think it was the book Crucial Conversations. I wish I could remember the term, but you start off with statements of what's not happening. And so you tell the person really clearly, because they're nervous. If you're their boss, Daniel walks into the room like, oh my gosh, am I losing my job? Am I going to get yelled at? What did I do wrong? You tell them, hey, what I want you to know is you're not in any trouble at all. And you kind of laugh. You're not getting fired at all. When you walk out of here, you're going to feel real good. You're not in trouble. So they're able to breathe a sigh of relief and say, okay, then now they can listen. If they're afraid of the hammer dropping, they're not going to listen. So you establish that. And then what you do is you're really direct. And the most loving thing you can do is tell the truth. And you start and you say something like, you're not hitting our expectations. And it's just that clear. You're missing the target. And then depending on how serious it is, you go ahead and just super lovingly say, I believe in you. I'm going to try to help you change. And I'm going to give you some coaching. And then you're really clear. Here's specifically what needs to happen by when. Here's what I'm going to do for you. And so you set all that up. You're really, really clear. Clarity. We need this to happen by such and such date. We're going to get you a mentor, or I'm going to go through a book with you, or we're going to meet every single week, or whatever it is. And then you just tell them, and if things don't change in the next 90 days, then we are going to have to make a change. What you just did right there is one of the most life-giving things you could do. You weren't mean, you were clear. I think Dave said in our podcast, clarity is kind, when I interviewed him. Clarity is kind. And that's what you're doing. You're letting them know you're not, this kind of behavior is not acceptable and it can't continue. But here's exactly specifically what we want. And we need to see this by such and such time. And here's how I'm going to help you get there. And if you don't get there, then we're going to make a change. So then as you're coaching them over the next 90 days or so, is real clear every week. They're winning or they're not. And if they win, you celebrate it like crazy. I'm so proud of you. You're doing great. This is awesome. You're hitting it. Way to go. Keep on, man. This is fantastic. And you're helping them feel the win. You're sharing the win with them. And if they're not, it gets really, really clear, which is, hey, I told you that we had to get here by this point and you're not there. And so then that conversation is actually not hard because you've already had the clear conversation. And that's not mean. That's not a domineering leader. That's a good, clear, loving, caring leader. And people will respect that if you'll tell them the truth.
Well, and it's a good way to serve them, because if you've been that clear, by the time, if it gets to the point where they're not cutting it and they do need to be let go, they're not surprised.
They're not surprised.
You've been so clear that they're kind of like, yeah. And we've even had this here where we've done it really well. Like they come in a week before you're about to schedule the meeting to have the final, and they're like, hey, it feels like I'm not making the turn. And you're like, yeah, we're about to talk to you about that. But that's brilliant. It's so great that they understood what was expected, because the worst thing is we have an expectation in our mind as a leader, and we're assuming they can read our mind. And they don't have the opportunity to rise to the occasion, and all of a sudden they're blindsided with this bad news that they got to go. And in that case, it really, I would say it wasn't their fault. It was our fault as a leader that they didn't perform.
No, and that was my story for the first probably 5 years of my leadership, which is people would frustrate me. They weren't getting it done. So, someone, and I wouldn't have the courage or the care to tell them. And I would tolerate it until the point where I finally had too much, and then I'd come in and say, we're done. And they're like, what? Oh, they're blindsided. And that's really, really bad leadership. And that's pretty common in our organizations. If we don't create a culture that we crave helpful feedback, we value coaching, we see feedback and coaching not as correction, but as an expression of love and care. And that's what we do on a team.
I think it is common. And we've hit on the two reasons. I mean, I think we have a misperception about what kind is. That misperception is that if we lay up a little bit, or we kind of soft pedal the feedback, that somehow that's being kinder, when the truth is we didn't give them enough objective feedback for them to do something about it. And then the second one is, that we don't take that time and walk through a process and coach them. And we have found, I'm sure you've seen this too, many people will rise up to the coaching. I mean, it's very, very rare that this ends in some kind of a termination if we do it right.
Way more often than not, right? And then the other thing, Daniel, I'll tell our leaders is, like, if you've got someone that reports to you and they're consistently a problem, they're a problem at this meeting and 6 months from now and a year from now and 18 months from now, eventually they're no longer the problem, right? Eventually you're the problem, because you haven't either helped them rise to the task, or you haven't found a better seat for them on the bus. So, ultimately, it's my responsibility to help people get there, or to help them find the right place for them to be. And so that's why, like we talked about before, leadership is so important no matter what field you're in.